A tragedy in Salem this weekend. 4 people died after a car crashed into a homeless camp. Those living there told us,
This could have been prevented if we had somewhere safe to go.
So tonight we're asking, are there enough shelter beds in Salem for everyone who needs one? Meantime, in the Portland metro area, your tax dollars are helping solve the affordable housing crisis, one development at a time.
We need it very much because everything is so expensive that people can't afford to get off the street or out of their cars.
And it's all thanks to a bond measure passed 4 years ago that you might not even remember at this point. Here's the story.
Howdy, I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. All the ways to communicate with us right there at the bottom of your screen. You can email us. The address is thestory@kgw.com. You can use the hashtag TheStoryKGW on Twitter, or you can leave us a good old-fashioned voicemail. Just call our phone number, 503-226-5090. In Salem tonight, a shockwave of sorrow and anger continues to spread after a 24-year-old man suspected of drunk driving lost control of his sports car going to 70 miles an hour and crashed into 3 homeless tents early Sunday morning. 4 people are dead, 2 others have life-threatening injuries, and the driver is in jail facing very serious charges. It is an awful thing. Some have wondered why the homeless campers were there in the first place. It's a fair question. Let's take a logistical look at that. The campers earlier lived in Marion Square Park, but had been moved out of the park in a sweep. That's not to blame anyone, it's just part of the sequence of events in place. So they moved to a small bit of land just off the southbound lanes of Highway 99E. There were railroad tracks and a building behind them, but no other roads. And it looks like the camp was just a few blocks from the Union Gospel Mission, which may have also played a role in their location. Police said the driver was going north on Highway 99E, then lost control just after Union, crossed the southbound lanes, and slammed into the homeless campers' tents. So that's one reason they were there. Another reason might be the lack of homeless shelter beds in Salem. The city homeless support groups have made some gains. A nonprofit called Arches bought this Super 8 motel and is creating space for 100 people. But a homeless advocate told us yesterday the area is still about 500 beds short of being able to house everyone. So that could be another reason they were there. No indoor shelters. And then there are the wide variety of issues and problems that lead people to the streets in the first place, from mental health challenges to drug and alcohol addictions and other reasons. But whatever the reason, they did not deserve to be killed in their tents at 2 a.m. yesterday. Was it a bad place to camp? Absolutely. Extremely dangerous, as we now know. But maybe they felt it was out of the way. I've met few people who enjoy having camps like that near their homes, and they are all over the metro area. Neighbors of camps say car break-ins and theft rise after campers move in, and the garbage often piles up. But I've also personally been to death scenes like the one in Salem, and I've talked with homeless survivors who've lost friends, and it's as crushing to them as it is to you when a loved one dies. The people who died in Salem were Jawand Beck, 24, Luke Kagi, 21 years old, Joe Pasota III, 54 years old, and Rochelle Zacona, 29 years old. Those Salem homeless campers did not deserve to be killed in their tents. I know I'm stressing that, but it's because of the harsh comments that some have left on our YouTube page that carries the stories of the crash. People have said ugly things like, now they'll have a permanent home and earn, or great way to clean up our streets. Are you kidding me? Have we really sunk so low that fellow human beings losing their lives are reduced to smug one-liners? Are people who feel that way so poisoned, so hardened, that they can really dehumanize others in such a casual way? I wish there were the only 2 nasty comments that I've just mentioned on that page, but there are more. I'll spare you the discomfort of hearing them, but I want you to know they are out there. Problems with homeless campers affect nearly all of us, but treating fellow humans as if they are mere pieces of garbage does nothing to solve our problems, and it only erodes our moral fiber. It's a sad state of affairs that people think such thoughts and send them out on social media platforms, no doubt hoping for congratulations from others who share such twisted views. It is not uplifting or empowering or moving anyone an inch closer to a solution. If you are frustrated by problems with the homeless, work towards solutions which are caring and thoughtful. Dehumanizing people, definitely not the way to go. That's my opinion. You don't have to agree with it, but of course you should. And feel free to email me or leave me a voicemail. I welcome your feedback. Our email is thestory@kgw.com and our voicemail number is 503-226-5090. All right, now let's talk a bit more about the homeless situation. It would be fair to ask why police in Salem, or anywhere else for that matter, can't arrest people for camping on public spaces. The answer is it's because of a key court case that restricts police. Let's dive in our segment that we call How Did We Get Here? The case is called Martin v. the City of Boise, as in Boise, Idaho, and it's been used to fight camping restrictions in several cities, including Salem. Back in 2018, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled a city cannot charge someone with a crime or give them a ticket for sleeping in a public place if there's a lack of shelter beds. In other words, nowhere else for that person to go. The judges declared that charging someone with a crime for sleeping outside when they have no other choice is a violation of the Eighth Amendment, that it qualifies as cruel and unusual punishment. So in cases where you hear of cities and counties thinking about banning camping, this rule is often what stands legally in their way. And while we're talking about shelter and housing, we do want to focus on a positive development for you tonight. Some new affordable rental homes are going up in Happy Valley. They were made possible by a voter-approved Metro Affordable Housing Bond from 2018. Brian Clerkley has the details for us.
There's 143 new housing units going up, and these units will be studios, 2-3 bedrooms. And this is the first affordable housing complex in Happy Valley that was funded by that Metro bond from 2018, and it's called Good Shepherd Village.
Homelessness is an issue in Clackamas County. It doesn't look the same as it looks in downtown Portland, but it is here.
Here at Southeast 162nd Avenue in Happy Valley, crews have started building these affordable homes. This $60 million project was funded in part by the voter-approved Metro Affordable Housing Bond. Over $16 million from the bond will go into this development. Linda Walker lives in the neighborhood and thinks affordable housing is crucial.
We need it very much because everything is so expensive that people can't afford to get off the street or out of their cars. So I think this will be a great addition to the neighborhood.
Travis Phillips with Catholic Charities says the home should be done by the end of next year. Residents will pay only 30% of their income towards rent, no matter how much they make. There will also be units available for families that earn less than 30% of the area's median income. For example, a 3-bedroom unit could be rented for just over $700 a month.
The need is far greater than the supply of housing, so these 143 new homes are going to be really important for the folks who live here, but it's just one piece of solving the crisis of housing affordability and homeless in our region.
Around 10 years ago, the Brokamp family donated the 11 acres of land to build Good Shepherd Village. John Brokamp says it was important for his family to give back to the community.
Give them a base, give them an anchor, give them something that they really enjoy and keep enjoying it.
There will also be 15 apartments set aside for veterans and senior citizens. Officials say there's 30 projects in the works through that Metro Affordable Housing Bond, and one includes an affordable senior housing unit in Gladstone. Brian Clerkley, KGW News.
Now let's take a look at the progress of that Metro Housing Bond. First, some background. Voters passed it in 2018. It generates more than $652 million total to build about 12,000 homes for people. They're available to people making 60% of the area's median income, so that's about 50 grand for a family of 4. Since the bond passed 4 years ago, only about 180 homes have been finished. 801 are now under construction. Another 2,000 are under what Metro is calling pre-construction, and another 800 or so are needed to get to the goal of building 3,900 homes within 5 to 7 years. 34% of the homes are set to be built in Washington County, 21% in Clackamas County, and 45% in Multnomah County. They've spent a little over half the money on those homes. There's about $289 million left. But it's only a small dent in the housing supply problem around here. Metro plans to build about 3,900 homes, but they say they're about 48,000 short. Big difference. And speaking of solutions, today's the day that Portland Street Response officially expands citywide. Congratulations. This is an unarmed team meant to be an alternative to calling the police for situations where armed police maybe are not necessary or even wanted. They've been working in Southeast Portland for a little over a year now in the Lentz neighborhood, and they're sent to calls involving mental health crisis or when there's concern about a homeless person. They've had a lot of success in helping people out in ways the police can't. A team from Portland State University found that in the first 6 months, about 90% of the calls Street Response went to would have been given to police in the past. Most of them were for mental health needs. And about a quarter of the time, the person involved was taken care of. They didn't have to go to the hospital. No one was arrested. So why is that important? Well, the Street Response team was pitched after advocates said police were sent too often to calls involving homeless people when violence was not a factor. Portland police also have a pattern, at least in the past, of using excessive force against people suffering from mental illness. And the U.S. Department of Justice concluded that nearly 10 years ago, after a line of police officers killed people who were having mental health crisis. But the police are on board with the Street Response. They're drastically short-staffed now, and the team frees them up from having to go to every call.
With the establishment of the Portland Street Response and now the citywide rollout of the Portland Street Response, we are in a better position to be able to appropriately manage mental health crises on the streets. That was the intention of this program. As Commissioner Hardesty indicated, we've gone from pilot to full citywide expansion of the Portland Street Response in the period of a year. That's not all that is being done around mental health services. Of course, we're working with our partners at Multnomah County and the state to expand options for people experiencing both acute as well as less acute mental health situations on our streets. But from the city's perspective, I think this is a huge step forward in terms of being able to address individuals who are experiencing crises on our streets.
The Street Response team still will not go out if someone has a weapon or if they're in traffic or inside someone's home. That's still for the police. And right now they're only working 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day, but they're asking the city for more funds so they can expand and go 24/7.
Oregon's 5th congressional district looks a lot different this year. So what does that mean for Representative Kurt Schrader, who's being primaried by a more progressive candidate?
Congressman, have you gone too far to the right for this new district and for many Democrats?
Plus, a new bill in Washington aims to help close the pay equity gap by requiring companies to include salary information on job postings.
White men get rewarded for aggressively negotiating, whereas women of color can be punished for the same thing.
But some business owners are not on board with the change.
We are always looking for the unintended consequences.
When the story continues.
Comments to the story at kgw.com or give us a call. Leave us a voicemail at 503-226-5090. All right, let's talk about one of the big races for Congress in Oregon. It's the Democratic primary for Oregon's 5th district between incumbent Congressman Kurt Schrader and his challenger, Jamie McLeod Skinner. Schrader is trying to get reelected for his 7th term, but the district he's trying to win in now looks a lot different after redistricting. Check this out. The map on the left shows Oregon's old 5th. See, it kind of goes from the coast to the Cascades, encompasses Salem and a southern section of the Portland metro area. The map on the right, though, is the new 5th district. It no longer includes Salem or any part of the coast. Instead, it crosses over the Cascades and includes Bend. Of course, that city has had a huge population growth over the past decade, one of the fastest growing in the country. According to the political website 538, the new district has about the same partisan lean as the old one, which is slightly to the left. That's how some would characterize Congressman Schrader, slightly to the left, but others, like his challenger, say he's actually gone way too far to the right. He's become way too conservative, they think. Here's what McLeod Skinner told Laurel Porter on Straight Talk last week.
Kurt Schrader is not the guy that was originally sent to Congress, and he's gone so far to the right that running to the left of him just simply means you're a Democrat.
What's your biggest beef with him?
Well, two really. One, that he's lost touch, and the second, that he's really become part of the problem with big money in politics. To my first point, he doesn't seem to understand the crisis that working families and our climate and our democracy in. He's voted against letting Medicare negotiate prescription drug prices. He's voted against a $15 minimum wage for the federal minimum wage. And he's voted against tackling climate crisis. This is all the challenges that all Oregonians are facing. And, it's no surprise that the big donations he's taken are from the same folks, those hundreds of thousands he's taken from Big Pharma and from the Koch brothers. They've maxed out on him. Those that he's taken money from, he's also voted in their support.
Now, in case you missed it, these are two Democrats running against each other. A lot of the local party leaders seem to agree with what plowed Skinner has just said. She's been endorsed by the Democratic Party officials in 4 counties, including Clackamas, which is Schrader's home county. That's a bad sign. Laurel asked the congressman about losing those big endorsements and his voting record.
And it's pretty unusual for an incumbent not to get that endorsement. They say you're out of touch with your constituents. And here are some of the reasons why they say. You were one of only 2 Democrats who voted against the initial passage of the American Rescue Plan, but eventually voted for the final version. You opposed the popular $2,000 stimulus checks, and they blame you and other Blue Dog Democrats for stripping out important climate provisions in the Build Back Better Act. Congressman, have you gone too far to the right for this new district and for many Democrats?
A lot of what you just said is inaccurate and misrepresenting our position. In any legislative process, you vote for and against things at various turns. But as you pointed out, we voted for the American Recovery Plan. And frankly, we voted for the Families First Plan, the CARES Act, and my problem solvers group was responsible for making sure that we had a bridge from the last administration, this administration, with another care package with regard to COVID. So we work really hard in these areas. I think a lot of what has been said is frankly inaccurate. We've developed a prescription drug plan that can actually pass the Senate. We're pushing hard for the affordable housing, and we led the fight to make sure we actually got an infrastructure plan across the finish line. That was huge. As we've seen, the rest of the agenda was in trouble. We would have nothing if it wasn't for a few moderate Democrats willing to stand in there and make sure we got transportation, broadband, water resources, energy resiliency, biggest investments in climate change in American history. There's more to do, and that's why I want to go back.
So Schrader is betting on his track record as a moderate to get reelected, even in this newly drawn district. Speaking of track records, it's worth noting that plowed Skinner has a losing track record when it comes to big elections. In 2018, she ran against Congressman Greg Walden and lost. And last year, she lost in the primary for Secretary of State. So we'll see what happens this May. In the meantime, you can watch Laurel's full interview with both Congressman Schrader and plowed Skinner on the KGW YouTube page. It's there right now. How many of you remember the eruption of Mount St. Helens back in 1980? I do. Well, it didn't just happen out of the blue. The volcano had a series of mini eruptions in the months leading up to the big one. We're going to revisit that in the KGW Vault when the story continues. If you've looked for a job recently, you know that some jobs that are advertised will have a category, kind of a range of pay, but certainly not all of them, and it's definitely not required. But a new bill in Washington will require it if it's signed by the governor, which is expected to happen. It sounds pretty nice for job seekers, but some business owners do not like the idea. Let's have Drew Mickelson explain.
Under the current law, if you're applying for a job at a place like Olympia's Bud Bay Cafe, they don't have to tell you how much money you can make until they offer you the job. This new proposed law would put all that information up front.
We get it up to 250 degrees.
The majority of workplaces in the state would be impacted, including Yelm's Ice Chips Candy.
Ice chips are candy made with xylitol, which is a natural sweetener.
Its co-founders started making the candy for all of their grandkids.
I have 30.
16.
The grannies, as they call themselves, now sell their treats worldwide. The pandemic did shut them down, and despite continuing supply shortages, they are making a comeback. So they're not thrilled about another government regulation.
We are always looking for the unintended consequences or the shoe to drop later.
Ice Chips has 17 employees. Under the bill, starting next January, all job openings for businesses with more than 15 employees would have to include salary ranges. It's optional now, and state agencies already make that information public.
This bill is a continuation of our work as leaders in pay equity.
The bill's sponsors and supporters say disclosing starting pay ranges makes for a more level playing field for job seekers negotiating that starting salary.
White men get rewarded for aggressively negotiating, whereas women of color can be punished for the same thing.
This bill would be a tremendous burden on our small businesses who are trying to recover from the pandemic and even in normal times.
Lobbyists representing small and large businesses fought the bill, raising concerns over releasing proprietary information and potentially violating privacy rights.
We are definitely on the rebound.
The grannies don't think the law would be too much of a burden, but they say sharing salaries should be a decision they make instead of the government.
If I wanted to know it, I could call them and find out. I don't need to be treated like everything has to be done for me. I think that's what I don't like.
The bill narrowly passed out of both the House and Senate and now sits on the governor's desk awaiting his signature. One of the lobbyists who tried to fight this bill does expect the governor to sign it.
That was Drew Mickelson. Hey, let's take a minute now and dive into the KGW vault. Yesterday was a big anniversary for Mount St. Helens, but not the one you're thinking of. On March 27, 1980, the volcano started really waking up after 123 years of hibernation. The first hole appeared on the northwest face of the summit, and an ash plume, see it there, started moving up. This was the first of a series of small eruptions that happened before the big one, which was 52 days later on May 18th, 1980. Alrighty, keep sending your questions and comments to the story at kgw.com. When we come back, how you can personally help fight hunger. We want to remind you about this week's Hey Help campaign. We're asking you to donate to the KGW Great Food Drive. So far, check this out. We've collected enough food for almost 2 million meals. During the pandemic, 1 in 4 Oregonians sought food assistance. When you donate this week, Pacific Office Automation will match the first $10,000. To see all the ways to give, or if you yourself need assistance, visit kgw.com/food drive. And we want to thank all our partners, including Pacific Office Automation, local Toyota dealers, Rivermark Community Credit Union, and Safeway for supporting this year's food drive. Hey, it's the last Monday in March. Let's hear a little good news from some folks we met recently on Vancouver's waterfront.
Everything's good. I have family down this weekend and we're enjoying a new baby and great dinners, great atmosphere, and we have perfect weather.
You know, the weather's getting warmer and that's you know, just feel the change of the shift of weather, shift of atmosphere, you know. So just kind of it's just happier to be out and about nowadays.
Yep, I feel you. Enjoyed the weekend. Hey, that's the end of our show. Thanks for watching. But remember, the story, our story, that never ends. I'll see you tomorrow.
This is KGW News at 6:30.
But my son is not a murderer. I promise you that.
And our top story this Monday, a mother defends her son outside court. Now, he is the driver accused of killing 4 people when police say he crashed into a homeless camp in Salem. Thanks for joining us. I'm David Molko.
And I'm Laurel Porter. Today we learned the 4 people who died were Jowand Beck, Luke Cagey, Joe Posada III, and Rochelle Zacamoni. Some of their families were in the courtroom today. Our Christine Pitawanich has the update.
My son's not a murderer.
Those are the words of a mother who just saw her son, 24-year-old Enrique Rodriguez, appear in court. He's accused